Greetings, hello, and a very, very warm welcome to all the participants, listeners who have logged in to our new series of webinars starting today from a large number of time zones as far as Brazil as well as New Zealand. So a very warm welcome to everybody. Quick ground rules before we start. I am very sure that a lot of you have been listening to a lot of webinars already. Like many of them, this webinar and the interactions are also being recorded. And as an attendee and even as someone who has registered for the webinar, you will get an email later with the link to the recording. There is a question and answer box. Please familiarize yourself with the controls of this webinar. You should all be able to access by clicking a link below which says question and answers, and there is a separate link where you can open a chat box to chat with the panelists and everybody. Any questions that you want to ask that you would like us to address formally, please type them in the question and answer box and not the chat box. And yes, like the previous series, we will have some small polls or questions during the session today. And whenever you see this link or this icon blinking on your screen, please do get ready to answer a short, quick poll that we would be presenting to you. Today, as we continue our journey for an increased understanding and awareness related to passive fire protection, we talk about the new BS8414 test method. An extremely large number of people in the audience are already familiar with this test, and many of you who have logged in may not be familiar with this test at all. And we have a very broad spectrum of people who have joined in today. So let me begin with giving a quick introduction about our company. For those who may not know us yet, I represent, and we are representing a company called Thomas Bell Wright International Consultants based out of Dubai. We have been around for a quarter of a century, 25 years. We are in our 26th year. We started off as a curtain wall testing laboratory where you could do mock-up tests. And over the period of the last decade or so, we extended our offering to do fire testing, starting off with just fire resistance testing and some reaction to fire testing from our facility in Dubai. And in the last 6 to 7 years, since I have joined, we have grown and expanded in many directions. We have had an intense focus on cladding related subjects. So we have reaction to fire tests to European and American test methods. We are probably the only accredited lab in the world to offer the fire propagation tests as per the American standards, that is the NFPA 285, as well as the BS standards, the British 8414 test. We also have 4 fire resistance furnace where we can help test as well as offer conformity services for an extremely large type of passive fire products, materials, systems, whether they are fire rated doors, partition walls, or fire stopping material or so. I'm assuming a lot of you might know me. You have been seeing my name on the emails that you have been getting related to the webinar. I am Abhishek Chhabra. I represent the company and extremely passionate about conformity and compliance. And since the last 15, 20 years, I have been heavily involved in selling product conformity services related to safety as well as quality across several supply chains, whether it is construction building material or switchgear or renewables and so on and so forth. Joining me with is my colleague Sujana. You would probably see her screen pop up somewhere now or maybe later when she starts to speak. She is a senior fire engineer, and She has a vast experience of a large number of tests. She's done probably over 400 reaction to fire tests in a very short span of time. And she is also responsible for the fire propagation tests. And she will be talking a considerable portion of the session today. Before we begin and talk in detail about the subject, I would like to say that why are we here? And a lot of you are probably familiar. Why are we here? The world over, the construction industry, the regulators, the finance industry is struggling to solve the problem that has arisen by awareness about these big facade fires that have been happening almost everywhere in the world. So we have a situation which has two parts. We have a problem related to existing building, and it is still not necessarily estimated as to how many buildings around the world are unsafe and have potentially combustible cladding. And of course, thousands and thousands of buildings are being designed, constructed, built at this point of time. How do we solve and ensure that these buildings are safe when they start to get built? So how we have been involved is, some of you may be familiar with the Effects tool, a tool which has been a freely available tool, but prepared by the NFPA's research foundation called the Effect tool. Arup was the lead in helping develop this tool for the NFPA Research Foundation, and they were heavily supported by Jensen Hughes as well as us in giving inputs related to correlation of how a lot of materials test and behave in small scale and large scale tests. For new constructions, as a laboratory and as a lot of staff members, we have been heavily involved in supporting UAE's civil defense and various authorities arriving at a better understanding of the subject of facade fires, and they have been able to come up with a fairly stringent code which has been implemented. We have also been involved in several other initiatives like supporting the Saudi Arabia Standard Organization in evolving a better standard for aluminum composite panels, in order to support implementation of not only the UAE Fire and Life Safety Code, but a better implementation of conformity and conformity assessment. We launched our certification mark and we became a certification body, and our certification scheme related to materials and systems that have been complying to various test methods and standards for facade application has been very, very popular. TBW Cert is our certification directory, and most likely at the end of the session, this is going to open a link to you. For the existing building, we also supported a very exciting and interesting project for a solution that was created by Johnson Controls. On the bottom left of your screen, you will probably see a small video. This video shows how we built a massive wall, which is a 25 by 35 meter wall in our facility to help them demonstrate the successful functioning of their solution. It is a very interesting active fire solution which senses a building, a fire on the exterior side of an existing building. It's a retrofit solution which taps into the existing water riser, and it is able to sense and quickly bring in control any fire that is possibly breaking out. So with this as a brief background about where we come from, I'm going to open a small quick poll to all the attendees. I would encourage you to quickly come back and answer this poll question. I'm sure you will see this poll question on your screens now. I would like to listen to what or hear back from you, get a quick click, and love to get feedback from all the participants. I see the number that has been rising on the screen, people from an extremely wide variety in geography, people in different time zones. So I don't know, morning, afternoon, evening, some people pretty late evening as well, on the other side, closer to New Zealand and Australia. I let the poll be open for a few more seconds, and I would encourage the balance 15-20% people who are yet to vote to quickly vote and give your answers so that we can move forward to the session today. What we aim to do today is to bring about a much better understanding about three things which are very close to today's subject, and these three things are things related to a mock-up. What is a mock-up? And when a system is mocked up in a lab and this system is tested as per a mock-up test method like the BS8414, which we will be talking about today, but any other test method which is a mock-up test like the NFPA 285, there are about 20-30 test methods around the world, many still in evolution stage. And how these two dots not only link, but how these two dots link with the end game, which is in the mind of all of us people who are investing their time, their efforts, their energy in doing these large-scale fire propagation tests. And this end game is that we would like to have a fire-safe cladding. So how do these three dots connect is the subject that we will be talking about today in greater detail. After a few slides, I'm going to pass on the presentation screen to my colleague Sue. But before I do that, I think it is very, very important to understand that there are many, many things which come in between these two steps. And even though as a part of this webinar, we may not talk about all these things in place at this time, I feel it is important to bring these out to an extent so that when you're listening to the slides, when you're listening to today's session, understanding what the test method is, how the test results are used, how the test results can be used, it will be good to know that this is part of a much larger situation and has many other things which are in place. People in the audience who are familiar and very well aware of how facades and cladding materials come together to provide the much needed solution and the slick looking buildings that we see around us and what all goes behind them. These people are very well aware that a simple facade, let alone a complicated facade, would have a few hundred drawings sometimes, maybe even more, when different materials are being used to engineer a solution which will help achieve and tick so many boxes related to weather performance, building comfort, and the list goes on and on and on. So in the test that we understand today, we must keep in mind that an engineered facade system has several different building materials that come together in various forms and shapes. With that, let's begin our journey towards understanding the BS 8414 test method. We will not only talk about the scope and the coverage and how the test functions and operates, we will also be touching upon the BR135 document, the document which is a guideline document and adds on to one of the several ways in which data coming out of the test method can be used to form a regulation, can be used to form a criteria of pass or fail. We will later also talk about the newly published, almost very new, the BS 9414 standard, which is similar to the extended application standards that exist for many different products. Um, so without much delay, let me pass the baton to my colleague, Sue. I hope she is online and listening. Sue, all yours. Please go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, for the wonderful introduction and the information shared. So today we will be discussing about the BS 8414 standard as Abhishek discussed, and then we will have a small discussion about the scope, coverage, and test results of this particular test method. Now let me make you all familiarized with the test rigs of BS 8414. We have two parts for this particular test method. One is BS 8414-1. You can see the test rig of BS 8414-1 on the right side. And the one on the left is the BS 8414-2. According to the standard, both these test rigs has the same dimensions. It has got a height of 9.7 meters from the floor level, and it has got two different wings. One is a main wing and the other one is a return wing or wing wall. So these two wings have a minimum dimension requirement according to the standard. The main face must have a minimum width of 2.6 meters, whereas the return wing must have a minimum width of 1.5 meters. But a contractor can come up with a different dimension for their test specimen, which is completely acceptable according to the standard. But the standard restricts, or the standard is very keen about having a minimum specimen dimension, which is again 9.7 meters above, 9.7 meters in height from the floor level, which is 7.7 meters above the combustion chamber. And the main wing must have a minimum width for the specimen is 2.4 meters, whereas the width of the short wing or the return wall must be 1.2 meter according to the standard. The major difference between these two standards, that means the -1 and -2, these two parts are that the BS 8414-1 test rig represents an existing building made of a masonry wall onto which the cladding system is going to fix. But whereas the BS 8414-2 test rig is made up of a steel frame structure, which is providing a more degree of flexibility for the contractor to choose the type of substrate or base wall or any kind of design that is going to be constructed on site. That means, for example, if you have a sandwich panel system on site which won't have a backing wall or maybe a base wall, or there won't be any substrate behind that such a system can be recreated in the BS 8414-2 test rig. At the same time, you can have a drywall partition onto which ACP system or aluminum composite panel cladding system going to be fixed. Such a system can also be recreated in 8414-2. So this particular test rig is giving more flexibility for the contractor to choose the actual design on the site. Now we have the scope of this particular standard test standard. Here, this standard intention is to analyze the fire performance of non-load bearing external cladding systems and drain screen overcladding system and external wall insulation system when it is fixed to supported by a masonry substrate according to BS 8414-1. But in case of BS 8414-2, this method is only analyzing the fire performance of no load bearing external cladding system alone. It won't give any idea about the rain screen over cladding systems or external wall insulation systems. The peak fire exposure of this test method represents an external fire source or a post flashover fire in a room bending out through an opening and exposes the cladding to the external fire flame. That means you have a building where the fire is contained in a compartment and there is a chance of that fire to getting out, or the fire can bend out through any opening. That opening can be an existing one or it can be a new opening created due to the fire. So when this fire is breaking out through such an opening and this fire is hitting or attacking the cladding system, how this cladding is going to perform under such a scenario, that is what is represented or recreated in this particular standard. The sole idea of the standard is to give an indication of fire spread across or within the external cladding system. The data, what we are obtaining from this particular test method, will enable you to evaluate the fire performance of the components when combined to form a complete cladding system. As Abhishek discussed earlier, there are certain components involved in design of all external cladding systems. It can be either insulation or it can be any fixture like brackets, or it can be fire barriers. There are a lot of components which is involved in the design of an external cladding system. All these components alone, it has got its own fire performance or its own reaction to fire. But when all these components are put together as a system, and then when it is exposed to fire, how it's going to perform as a whole system, that is what we are recreating in BS 8414 test method. From this particular test method, what it will cover is it will give you a benchmark data for the classification of the cladding system that has been tested. And it will also speak about the extent of damage occurred for the system when it is exposed to a fire. And it will also provide you an insight about the cladding's ability to resist the propagation of fire upward. Falling debris is a very important parameter that has to be considered in the real fire event. So this particular test method is also considering that parameter in its test method. And it will also give you the extent of penetration during the fire exposure. What BS 8414 is not going to cover, or what is not included in this particular test method, is the performance of glass. It will not give you any idea. It cannot give any idea about the performance of the glass. And the supporting frame or glazed window openings are also not covered by this particular test method. And in this test method, it is not considering the exposure to radiant heat from a fire in an adjacent building. And what cannot be tested, or what is not suitable to be tested here, is the total configuration of the construction, incorporating the windows, doors, balconies, or any ancillary penetration cannot be tested fully in this test method. Like any contractors can come up with a design where it involves windows, doors, or any such sort of ancillary penetration, but such a system as a whole cannot be tested according to BS 8414. Now, as you can see, there is a BS 8414-1 test rig. There are 3 different levels for this particular test rig, which is level 1, level 2, and level 3. Yeah, since I'm talking about 3 levels, right now we are only discussing about the BS 8414 2020 version, because the 3rd level, this test procedure, is only based on the 2020 version. But we will be discussing what all are the key changes in the 2020 version compared to the previous version of the standard. But right now we will be discussing the test procedure according to the 2020 version. So according to this version of the standard, the test rig has got 3 different levels, which is level 1, level 2, and level 3. The level 1 is located at a distance of 2.5 meter above the head of the combustion chamber, and rest of the 2 levels are also separated by a distance of 2.5 meter each other. As you can see, there exists a combustion chamber on the bottom part of the test rig, which is a representative of, or which represents a compartment in which the fire is fully developed, and a wooden crib is introduced as a fuel source inside the combustion chamber. In all the 3 levels, both internal and external thermocouples are introduced. In all the internal layers, internal thermocouples are introduced in each and every internal layer when the thickness of the layer is more than 10 mm. Like if you can introduce, there must be a internal thermocouple if the level is an insulation layer which is having a 50 mm thickness. So any layer, it can be an air cavity layer which is having a thickness more than 10 mm. So any layer, internal layer which is having thickness more than 10 mm must be introduced with an internal thermocouple at the mid depth. This is just to analyze the performance of all these internal layers when the system is exposed to fire. The data, what we are obtaining from all these thermocouples, will be recorded throughout the duration of the test. And the test to begin, or there are certain conditions that has to be obtained to commence the test. The one among that is the temperature criteria, and the other one is the wind velocity criteria. Before starting the test, that is when you are going to ignite the crib, right 5 minutes before that, the mean temperature of the thermocouple in the level 1 should be recorded, and that is considered as the start temperature, which should be within 20 plus or minus 15 degrees Celsius. Once again, the temperature on the level 1 thermocouples just before 5 minutes of ignition of the wooden crib must be recorded as the start temperature. And we have one more criteria, that is the wind velocity. The wind velocity is also a very important parameter which can influence the test results. So before we commence the test, the wind velocity should not cross 2 meters per second. It should be less than 2 meters per second by any means. Then once we start the test, we cannot say that the test has been started when the combustion, when the wooden crib is ignited. There is a start time, which is the time when the temperature recorded by any external thermocouple at level 1 equals or exceeds a 20 degrees Celsius temperature rise above the TS, that is the start temperature, and above this value for at least 30 minutes. When the temperature at the level 1 thermocouples, external thermocouples, are exceeding about 200 degrees Celsius of the start temperature, then the test has been started. From there, we will be conducting the test for 16 minutes duration. The test duration is 16 minutes, out of which 30 minutes will be the, the 30 minutes will be the exposure period. After this 13 minutes, the wooden crib will be extinguished. Rest of the 30 minutes is for observation purpose. But throughout this duration, all the data from thermocouples will be recorded. And there exists early termination reference line on the 3rd level. When the flame spread exceeds or extends above the early termination line, the test shall be terminated. And with this, whatever data you are obtaining, you cannot say whether it is a pass or fail. This is just a test method. You will be just collecting the data. It does not have any pass or fail criteria. So each jurisdiction can decide the performance criteria based on the test results and inferences that you are obtaining from the test method. Depending upon the occupancy of any building, one can choose how stringent that performance criteria should be. If the occupancy level is really low, one can negotiate the performance criteria as well. Now, as I mentioned before, we will be comparing, or we will find out what all are the new changes in the 2020 version of the standard. So we have a new level in the new version of the standard, which is the third level. According to the previous version, there were only two levels, which is level 1 and level 2. So in the new version, a third level has been introduced, and we will be getting more data because of the new level. And early termination reference line has been introduced in the third level. That is also a change in the new version of the standard. Then we have an improved accuracy measurement for the wind velocity. In the previous version of the standard, it was 0.5 meter per second, and whereas it is improved to a 0.1 meter per second in the new version of the standard. And for the BS 8414-1, the masonry blocks which we are using had certain specifications like density, its thickness, thermal conductivity, and compressive strength. All these were a minimum value before in the previous version of the standard, but that during that period, we were able to use any blocks having a minimum specification of that to anything greater than that was also acceptable. But in the new version of the standard is very strict about it should be the nominal specification, exactly what is mentioned in the standard. The same nominal values must be followed in order to for the construction of the BS 8414-1 test rig. Then the new version of the standard is demanding the calculation or quantifying the damaged area. In the previous version, it was just an observation. And in the new version, the observation parameters or what and all has to be observed is very explained in very detail. So we have a poll again. So far, whatever we have discussed, we will just have a quick discussion about that, and let's see what you have to say about this for our questions.
Just a quick addition to everything. Sujana she used to teach in a university before this. So she's very used to querying the students whether they have understood everything or not. Well, that's not exactly the case. Please do read the questions carefully. Some of them may come across as trick questions. So these questions are there for you to just kind of get a flavor of possibly what all Sujana talked about. She spoke well, of course, and I'm going to show my face to everybody in a few seconds after she talks about the next session. Now, I'll leave you all back with her, and please go ahead and quickly answer to all the questions, and we look forward to your replies. We'll keep this open for another 10, maybe 15 seconds more. By that time, Sue can have a sip of water, take a quick break, and we are looking forward to the answers from everybody, just to get an idea.
Answers.
So anybody who marks the answers as they do not know, all those people are such that have nothing wrong that they have written. And it's only Sue that I will be talking to later that how come people are not answering the questions. All right. So I'll give another 10 seconds to everybody, and then I will let Sue can continue the session. Yes. Sue, please go ahead.
Yes. So now we have another document or guideline, BR135. As I mentioned before, this BS 8414 is just a test method. It won't give you any pass or fail criteria. So this particular document, BR135, it's a guideline document which has been introduced in UK. and this speak about the fire performance of external thermal insulations for walls of multi-story buildings. This particular document will give you an idea about what are all parameters that has to be considered while considering the safety of a cladding system while designing or while installing or that kind of a system. It's a guidance document that addresses the principles and design methodologies of non-load bearing external cladding system. This illustrates the scenarios are based on the typical examples of the current practice, but this field is subject to rapidly changing designs and materials. If you know the current market, we have a plenty variety of materials and very complicated designs. So we cannot restrict everything to we cannot have a strict written rule. So this guideline will give you an idea to focus on what all parameters and what impact all these parameters are going to have on the fire design and how safe we can design this system using these guidelines. That's the main idea of BR 135. And in the annex, it's talk about the performance criteria based on the BS 8414-1 and 2 test methods. So the one who want to classify their cladding system based on BR 135 must conduct or must perform a test of their cladding system according to BS 8414-1 or 2. And based on this one, it has got 3 performance criteria, whatever data you're obtaining from the BS 8414 test method. Using that data, this BR 135 classification can be done. So this particular method, one point I would like to add is, even though you have a data from BS 8414, sometimes there is a chance of early termination to occur during the test. Like if the test was terminated at about a 30 minutes time, so you have data only up to 30 minutes. In such a case, the system cannot be classified based on BR 135. You need a complete data for all full 60 minutes duration of the BS 8414. Then only such a test can be valid, or then only the test is valid for the classification based on BR 135. So for a system to fail because of the external fire spread, any of the thermocouple's temperature at the level 2 should rise above 600 degrees Celsius for a period of at least 30 seconds within 15 minutes of the start time. Even though you're considering the initial 15 minutes for the classification, when the test was terminated, even after that, that data cannot be used. And similarly for the internal fire spread, any of the thermocouple and the internal layers, if the temperature of such a thermocouple at level 2 raises above 600 degrees Celsius for a period of at least 30 seconds within 15 minutes of the start time, then it's a failure because of the internal fire spread. And there is a mechanical performance, but there is no a criteria set as such. It's from the test method, you will get to know all the mechanical phenomena like spalling, collapse, and all of that sort. But there is no criteria set as such for it. From there, we will move on to the recent document or the recent standard introduced in 2019. It was introduced in 2019. So the 9414 test standard it's a document which speaks about what all are the feasibility of the changes that can be done on a tested system. Like if you have tested your cladding according to BS 8414-1, but in the real case, you wish to fix that cladding system to a drywall partition or a drywall structure or a steel structure. What is the feasibility of that? Is it okay to safely, is it okay to do such a construction safely or not? With the data, what you have in your hand from the previous 8414-. Okay, what all are the required documents that one has to submit for the conformity of that? So the BS 9414 is talking about all such informations and each and every component, what all the changes are feasible to implement it safely. And say if there is a drywall partition and the lining board thickness was so and so, maybe it was 30. So one wished to change to 10 mm in the real case or in the field. So is it possible? If it is possible, what all data they should submit to the certification body in order to accept that change? So all these matters are discussed in this particular document, and this will help to understand the system better, what all changes is possible in the later on stage after the testing. Without testing, again, what all changes we can allow without affecting its safety concern. So this is what BS 9414 is all about. So that's from my part. I hope you all understood what I was trying to explain. And now over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you very much, Sue. I think we had tasked you with an extremely difficult project. Just for all the listeners, Sue will normally conduct a training program on these three documents for about 4 hours or 5 hours each. They are very detailed document. She's a good trainer. And it was quite a project when I asked her that you have maybe 15 or 20 minutes to do all of this. I believe she's tried to do justice, but for some people who joined in a little late, I have got some messages coming in to me in private as well that maybe they could not hear everything. So I'm just going to quickly summarize and give an explanation about this that she has been talking about, just so that there is a little more context to the last few slides that I'm going to take on. And it is important to know that the test method is a laboratory condition that has been created. And this laboratory condition tries to mock up a potential scenario in the field where the fire breaks out of existing or a real opening or an opening that gets made because of a fire. And what the test does is it tries to replicate a fully grown fire and how it will attack the whole system. And the key eyes and ears of the test, which are the thermocouples or the temperature sensing devices, are the data that provide all the information needed to take a decision of how risky a cladding system is, but also to get a very good understanding of the measures that have been put in place, the components, the materials that have been engineered to reduce potential risks. And as Sue explained, there are several new criteria and information that has been added in the new version of the test. And the British method, the BR135, which is a very nice document to bring about a better understanding to those people who want to write a simple regulation, who want to write some kind of a minimum criteria to distinguish between a good system and a bad system, has been published in the past. I believe the document is yet to be revised after the revision, if there is any such revision. But all of you would have understood that the test method has an extremely large number of data points, observations, and other information that can be used to distinguish and classify systems that are being used or are being considered to be used in specific geographies in the world around. And this is important because the test method has originated in the United Kingdom based on the perception in the United Kingdom of possible failures, based on primarily the kind of materials and cladding systems originally that have been used in the United Kingdom. And when we are extrapolating and using test methods which have been initiated in another region, care should be taken on how to implement this and what all that can be drawn out of these standards. So let me further talk to everybody on how effective it is and how important it is to understand and use these standards, these test methods. And I will try to bring about a better understanding of what is testing, which Sue has kind of explained. A test method is something that is repeatably performed, but also how you can link a test report with driving regulation, or what is often called as compliance. And I'm also going to touch up upon several different conformity assessment methods that are implemented the world around to ensure that the supply chain of materials is being correctly assessed, is being correctly checked. So let me begin with a quick overview for everybody that what are these standards and the numbers that we keep seeing once so very often. A code of practice like the approved document B or the ADB in the United Kingdom, or the UAE Fire and Life Safety Code, or the ICC, IBC building codes, or NFPA, or the National Building Code of India, as an example. These documents set in sound practices which are currently at this point of time should be undertaken by people who abide by or would want to undertake the minimum requirements that are set. Care should be taken to understand that the building codes or code of practice have often arrived at the minimum requirements as a learning from the accidents that they have seen till now, as a learning of how and which all materials and systems and designs that are currently in use or are available as information to the people who are arriving at this code. It is common in practice that new designs, new materials, and new type of applications, or sometimes even the occupancy type where a building is adding on a feature or a component or a material, is not covered or was not thought about the code of practice. So the code of practice is a good guidelines document to get an essence of why something is being done. Methods, on the other hand, are very, very prescriptive. These documents often create repeatability. And what is repeatability for tests? What is repeatability in specifications? And often these documents define how repeatability should be maintained. And then there are documents which are guideline documents. These are less prescriptive. These reflect the current thinking. And when I say current thinking, means when the guideline was published, not the current thinking when you are reading the guideline, of what is the input of the experts who were involved at that point of time, based on their understanding of the less prescriptive advice that is given. So care should be taken when we look at test methods, when we look at the guidance documents like the BR 135 or the BS 9414 document, that what these documents bring about. Jumping on, we all know that the trade has increased so many folds since the GATT Accord or the WTO was signed many, many years ago, and it gave birth to many different methods or rules or criteria to assess sellers or buyers of materials. What started off with ISO 9001, a system certification. I'm sure almost everybody will be familiar with a system certification, that whether a manufacturer or a trader or a contractor has certain processes that they follow of keeping record and so on and so forth. And this was the primary tool to assess initially many years ago that whether a supplier is good or not. And later on, people started relying on test reports, saying for each shipment at times, the materials that have been supplied, products were picked up and tested for various criteria, whether it was performance to mechanical properties, physical properties, or for example, like we are talking of a very critical property, which is fire behavior. But this was not enough. This was not even practical at times for materials that could be coming from far away. and test laboratories which were not available everywhere. So what evolved in many places in the world, and for many products where conformity needs to be very, very strict, is something which is called a certification and listing. The certification and listing is a process I have talked about a lot in my past, but certification and listing normally introduces a feedback loop. The third-party independent certification body would not only create a traceability between how products and materials are manufactured in the factory and what is tested, but also go on to increase the assurance by auditing the manufacturing locations to check whether they have processes and procedures in place that bring about the repeatability that is needed. And to empower these processes and to formalize these processes, I want to share with you a table which comes out of a standard called the ISO 17067. This is a document which helps third-party certification bodies develop schemes or methods or protocols on which they will provide assurance. And there are several things that are listed in these. And without kind of delving into all of these details, I want to bring your attention to a segment which you can all see on your screen right now, a segment which is marked in green. Several certification methods have some stringent requirements to create a feedback. When a product has been certified, there is an assurance mark on the product. How will it be verified? Is there someone who will pick up a sample once in a rare while from the field and test it? Would you go and do a spot check? Would you audit the factory? There are different processes and different measures and methods that have been put in place. And some of these certification methodologies are much more stringent than the other. The reason I created this slide today is because among the attendees and among the people who have registered for this session, there have been an extremely large number of people from around the region, not just the MENA region, but in the UK, in North Africa, and India, people who are either authorities having jurisdiction or their representatives, people who are contractors, people who are architects, designers, consultants, people who are creating the framework which will define conformity, people who are writing specifications. And I think it is important to know how compliance is driven down on a piece of paper. People in the UAE might be familiar that what you see here as type 5 that you see here on the screen. Let me try and see if I can show this to you. This, which is type 5, is the level of compliance that the UAE Civil Defense in their fire and life safety code have actually mentioned that this is a requirement for conformity. So the authority having jurisdiction has gone to this depth in the UAE by not only asking for just certification and listing, but also defining the methodology by which the third-party certification body will ensure that this listing or this conformity is being done. In countries like UAE and in several other countries, there is an additional step like in Dubai, where the product based on the certification and listing evidence has to be registered with the authority having jurisdiction like the UAE Civil Defense. So with this as a kind of an overview of how conformity assessment methods link up between test methods, between guidance documents, which assure or bring about some understanding or a better understanding. I want to bring your attention to the last few slides before I do a quick poll, as I always do, that when we are talking of liability in anything that we do, whether you are a contractor, whether you are an architect, a designer, or a material seller, there is some aspect of liability that pops in. You are in the ambit of law. There could be a legal requirement for you doing what you're doing. There could be a commercial requirement, as in there is a contract and you're supposed to do something. And of course, there is a reputation. Any of the actions that we undertake in what we do, in view of the law, the commercial contract, and whenever you break or come out of this, you are taking on a certain liability. So if you're breaking the law, which mandates conformity of your products before you put them in the market, you are breaking the law. If you're supplying a product to a project, to a contractor, which is not what the contractor is paying you for, there could be a commercial liability arising out of this. And of course, if you are cheating as a manufacturer and selling something which you are not supposed to sell, your reputation, of course, is at stake. So how do you ensure, whether you're a buyer or a seller, whether you're a designer or a doer or as a contractor, these two tools are the tools which often support ensuring that the liability is minimized. So before we get into these two tools, let me open a quick last poll question, and I hope you guys are all ready to answer the last poll questions for you before we come to a close to the webinar. The poll is open. Please go ahead and answer these questions. I hope as people who are listening in, you can see the poll, which is open now. And you can answer some of the questions that are coming up on your screen. These, in my opinion, are simple, easy questions. I'll give you a few more seconds, and then I will quickly come towards trying to conclude today's session. So kind of coming back to my billiard table while you close off the poll question, I hope we have been able to introduce, if not probably totally address and explain each and every aspect of the test method, of the classification documents, as well as on how conformity assessment works and can work. And I hope we have been able to kind of open some thoughts and open some questions in your mind, which some of which have been coming, and we've been crossing our time slightly. But I want to go back and conclude that here are some steps that you can take if in writing commercial or technical specifications to ensure that your liability is minimized. Whenever you are procuring material, it is important to define the compliance requirement with the right kind of references. If you're asking for certification and listing, if you're asking for a legal requirement, define what is the level of certification and listing that you want. Define whose responsibility it is. Is it the contractor? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the certification body? Who is responsible for what? It is important to clarify these things, because as you have seen and you are seeing more and more in the world around, with a lot of investigations happening everywhere, trying to drill back and understand who has erred, whose mistake it has been, it is important to have all of these things not only very clear, but crisp and documented. And last, apart from documentation, it is always good to add the additional incentive or additional linkage with the commercial contracts in place between the buyer and seller to ensure that your liability is minimized. I hope today's session and the last 1 hour that you have all invested with us has been interesting for you. And we are going to answer some of the questions that have been coming in. And please feel free to use the question and answer window on your screens to write in questions. And I'm going to take a break for another 5 to 10 seconds before we start addressing some of the questions. I'm going to ask my colleague Sue to also come back online if she's switched off the camera and run away somewhere, so that we can together answer some of the questions. As usual, I would be passing on the tough questions to Sue. And let me read out some of the questions which we can answer. There are some questions which are going into great detail about asking how the test rig can be recreated in another location. And I think we will take some of these questions offline. And I'm going to reach back to you, sir, on the questions related to how we support manufacturers or how we support subcontractors in installing, etc. So I'll come back to those questions. I'll read out, and Sue, you can answer these questions. The BS 8414-2 tests can be performed in open spaces, question mark. Is this true or not? Please answer. And the second part, there is a wind speed limit to perform these tests, question mark. Please go ahead, Sue.
Yes, we can perform the test on outdoor. There is no harm in that, but the standard is very keen on the wind speed. It should not cross about 2 meters per second, and there should not be any precipitation like rain or anything of that sort, which will have impact on the test results. And if that conditions can be attained, then we can perform the test on outdoors.
There's another question which I'll try to answer, that is there any difference in the flame height when you use the wood Pinus sylvestris timber grit from Russia or UK or Australia? And I'll try to address this question, Henk, that the test method is very simple and very clear. It defines how repeatably the test needs to be performed. And as Sue had also mentioned, the test method, part 1 and part 2, do not really give any pass-fail criteria or a methodology saying, well, if the flame has crossed this meter in this time, or if the thermocouple temperatures has crossed beyond this limit in this time, then the system is considered a pass or a fail. The only limit that the new version of the standard sets in place is that if the flame crosses the 3rd level, then the test is stopped. Isn't that right, Sue?
Yeah.
And so apart from that, the BR135 is one method to write a pass-fail criteria or a classification method. But as a contractor, as a material buyer, as an architect, as an authority having jurisdiction, whoever wants to use the test method to arrive at certain criteria can come up with whatever you want. The flame height is not defined by the test method. So as an example, the test method allows and captures in a lot of data related to mechanical failures. The test data captures a lot of information related to falling debris, but the falling debris currently in the current BR135 version does not really create a pass or a fail. So in case you are having a building that is getting constructed in an area where there is a lot of adjacent potential risk, there is a big car parking or there is something else close by which is much more combustible, then adding a criteria or picking up from a test of the 8414 saying falling debris is limited to whatever limitation you want to set in, and you should. So I hope that kind of answers that question. There's another question coming in. I usually like these questions. This question is about, in your opinion, which test method is more severe, the 8414 or the 285? This is the favorite question. We get this question so many times, and not just as a comparison between the 8414 or the 285, because in our fire resistance in the furnaces, we do a slew of tests, you know, ASTM E119 versus the British standard versus the EN standard versus the ISO standard, which is better or not. And believe me, as much as I would like to answer this question, there is no straight, clear answer which one is more severe, because it all really depends on three things. One, what is the assembly that is being mocked up? And the assemblies vary quite a bit. As an example, we have conducted tests of the exact same systems on the two test rigs. And a test rig has passed in this and failed in this, as well as vice versa. So there is no clear pattern that gets established. And the second thing which needs to be kept in mind is occupancy type and the geography that where the test method is being used. The readiness of the fire department or the civil defense varies from country to country, from region to region. The awareness and the readiness to evacuate a building varies from geography to geography and country to country. And there are extremely large number of criteria where such a test method should be compared, or how it should be compared. There's another question. So why is the focus solely on BS standards? Well, because this session is on the BS standard, we would love to do another session, and we might do another session related to the American standards as well. What kind of cladding type are usually tested by manufacturers in our laboratory? We've done a very wide variety of materials. The aluminum composite panel, of course, is one of the materials that we have tested quite a bit, owing to the spread of its use around the world and here as well, and also owing to the stringent regulation and the methodology by which this has been implemented. But that said, there is an extremely long list. Let me see which difficult questions I should leave for an email. So there is a question which is, I'll read this out. There is a huge debate in the United Kingdom over the validity of the 8414 test. No test can replicate a real fire scenario as claimed. Is 15 minutes sufficient if higher temperatures can be achieved after 15 minutes? Very valid question. I, as a laboratory representative, might not be able to answer in terms of whether it is valid or not in the real life scenario. As a lab, I can only answer 2 points out of this which can help you. One, as you must have understood, the 8414 test method is just collecting data. It is not setting any criteria whether A system is better than B system which has been tested, which means for United Kingdom or Malaysia or Australia or an airport in India, whoever is planning to use this test method, they can always choose to increase, decrease, or add criterias that are drawn out of the test method. So I feel this is a very open question. The debate is, of course, good, and it should result in a good answer with people who have more practical experiences from the site. There's another question related to A2 and A1 products, asking for how many wall assemblies featuring only A1 or A2 products have failed to meet the BR135? This is a question I would like to answer offline. We would not like to give away data that we've done X number of tests and Y have been passing or failing. Barry has a question. Do we believe that 2 meters per second is applicable 300 meters above the ground level in Dubai? Sue, I don't think you and I are correctly positioned to answer this question.
No, I totally get confused. Like to... 300 meter above ground level. What does it like? What he's trying to explain over there? I didn't get it.
Let's have a discussion with him later as well on this. I'll take just one or two more questions. Give me a few seconds. So you should, or I'll try. If there is no pass or fail criteria, then what happens if the temperature at level 1 is above 600 for more than 30 seconds?
That's not level 1. I guess he got confused between level 1 and level 2. The criteria is only for level 2 according to BR135.
Yeah. And if it is crossing level 1 to above 600, it just doesn't mean anything. It's just that the test has started.
What we are checking is the propagation. We are not checking if the flame itself is hitting the level 1, then there is we are not considering the propagation. So that's the reason why we have the level 2 as the criteria. I hope so.
Right. So there are some questions which I'm going to try and skip. Someone wants to know if we do the 13501-1. Yes, we do. Another question regarding that if the 8414 is sufficient to verify material combustibility. No, absolutely not. The 8414 test only validates in laboratory conditions of how a given design, when you bring together certain materials, will behave in a mocked up situation. So I hope that kind of addresses that question. And I think we are just about good. I'm asking this last question. The BS8414-2 tests can be performed in open spaces. Yes. There is wind speed limit to perform this question. Sue, can you take up this question? You can read the whole question and answer it. This is the last question we will take.
Which question is?
So there is a last question if you scroll down from Davies Depola. I'll read it out. The BS8414-2 test can be performed in open spaces, question mark, yes or no? And I think the answer is yes. There is a wind speed limit to perform this test. Yes, there is a speed limit. There is an ambient limit to the speed. Right? So
yes.
Is the answer correct?
2 meters per second. If it is beyond that, we cannot commence the test.
Which means if you're trying to do this test in the open, which you can, it will be very similar to Thomas Bell Wright trying to do this test on a really hot summer day in Dubai, which if the temperature, ambient temperature is about 44 degrees Celsius, then the test just gets postponed or is conducted at 4 a.m. in the morning. And someone like Sue is really, really troubled if that is done. So with that, we bring an end to today's session. We hope you have enjoyed the session and it has been very, very interesting. I will try to send a follow-up email soon, maybe by Sunday or Monday. And till then, we are very happy to be with you. And thank you very, very much for the attendance today. Best of luck. Take care.